with depression, there's several different treatments. Depends on how serious it is and what type of depression it is.
I was reading how many different types of depression there are. I just didn't understand it because, you don't until you look more deeper into it. And oh my God.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, very interesting.
And I think, to have a diagnosis of depression, you have to have had the symptoms for at least 6 months. So that's basically what you get a diagnosis from.
When you say the symptoms, what are they?
Low mood, and for some it can be reduced appetite,
Sleeping,
reduced sex drive, reduced sleeping, but then you can have it the other way. So you can have a greater appetite, you can have more sleeping. And so this is when we see that quite often someone will get a diagnosis and then they'll get a differential diagnosis, which means, so it's probably this, but it could also be this. We're not quite sure yet, because there's so many overlaps. So, there's overlaps between, schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder.
Right.
So, quite often, depending on the clinician, the doctor who's making the diagnosis, because we nurses can't make diagnoses, although we try.
You spend probably more time with the patient.
We do. We can advise, certainly, but from a diagnostic viewpoint, it's not up to us to do that. But what you'll see is that there's very similar symptoms, and then the more they're observed, the more conversations we have and time, you'll get to learn exactly where this patient's at. So again, that's sometimes why you don't know straight away what's actually wrong with someone. Time tells.
Yeah. Because I was listening to somebody talking about the difference, and they said, look, it's like a normal depression. Like people get depressed on certain things. Like I remember when my sister passed, I go through this, but to me, I thought, well, I'm grieving.
That's normal.
It's normal. I'm depressed. It's normal. I'm trying to find and fill this void that was left in my life. But then when you're clinically depressed, it's like 18 hours a day. Don't want to get out of bed. Suicidal.
Yep. Potentially, not
potentially,
always.
Yeah, not always. Lack of motivation for things that you were motivated about before.
And no enjoyment in life. It's called anhedonia.
Right.
So there's no enjoyment.
That has to be chemical, right? Like, we
just don't know.
Like serotonin, dopamine, what's the other one? Neuropinephrine, or like there's these amines,
Yep.
The lack of that.
Well, certainly that is definitely one way that people can become depressed is definite low chemical structure in their bloods. But the other way is quite often reactive depression.
Sure.
So, for example,
trauma.
If you had grieved and not come out of that grief.
Sure.
And it had gone on.
Sure.
We would say that's a reactive depression because it's something that has caused it.
Right.
Before then, you didn't have it.
Yeah, true.
When you lost Ferno and you didn't come out of it, that's a reactive depression.
Right.
Yeah. And we would say it's an unresolved grief and things like that.
Because I went for nearly a year, but I knew the month, it was January this year, I felt like I was emerging from deep waters. Like,
and all of a sudden the colours are brighter?
Yeah, and motivation came back and, I knew then what had sort of happened. Even though I was fine through the process of before she passed, I wasn't prepared for the void left after. That was a big thing for me. But then, looking at depression online and doing a bit of reading before you came on, I suddenly realised what varieties they are in depression.
Absolutely.
And I'm sitting there going, how do you diagnose? And two, is there a cure? Are we just handling the situation or is there a cure? And what is being a teacher for 12 years, I did notice a difference with the students coming through. And I didn't know whether that was social media as being a part of that, making people more isolated. I'm on social media, but I'm an older guy. I'm a middle-aged guy. So, well, I've got nothing to prove. Like there's no ego there anymore. It's like, well, I know my place in the world.
Correct.
But the youngsters coming through, they're looking at fake lives for one, realizing life's not like that. We're being told at a very early age that all you have to do is think it and you'll get it. And so suddenly now they're not getting it. Something's wrong with me. Also, being medicated very early so they don't feel what that pain is, to build a resilience and a resistance to that pain. And I used to say to my students that it gets like school is fine. Life is tough. It gets tougher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Adulting is hard.
Adulting is hard.
I don't like it. I want to quit it often.